Teresa began to pull at the door handle trying to get out. "It won't open," Harold told her. Teresa screamed. Harold reached over, grabbed her by the hair, and slammed her head into the dashboard, knocking her unconscious. Hello, and welcome to Fearfull Wickedness. I am your host, the storyteller. We hope you enjoy tonight's tale. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Harold had been a mortician all of his adult life, not because it paid well, not because it was a family business, but because he genuinely loved it. He loved the stillness of it, the neatness, the silence, but most of all, he loved creating it. To the quiet little town of Shelbyville, Harold was a kind, if peculiar man who ran Blue Sky's funeral home. He was always in a pressed black suit, always smelling faintly of lilies and lavender with a hint of formaldehyde. Nevertheless, people trusted him. Harold loved the compliments and attention he received from the grieving families. It was a rush to him to hear how great everything looked and how well he had taken care of their loved one. Harold enjoyed the time he spent preparing the bodies. Sometimes he would talk to them, sometimes he would sing, and sometimes he would take his aggression out on them. He could slap them around, and no one would ever know. He didn't see the deceased as someone's wife or daughter or sister. He saw them as playthings, things put there for his amusement. He could act out his fantasies without shame, fantasies that others would condemn. Harold's first kill had been an accident. He was leaving the symphony one night when a drunk homeless man stumbled out in front of his truck. It happened so fast he didn't have time to react. Harold jumped out of the truck looking around, but when he didn't see anyone, instead of calling 911 to report the accident, he simply put the man in the bed of the truck and drove back to his embalming room. Afterward, when Harold stood over the body, his heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to pleasure, he had never acted on his desires with a living person, so he made sure to take his time, and he knew this wouldn't be his last. Afterward, he went through all the usual steps and held a funeral for John Doe with a large turnout. People simply there to pay their respects to a lost and lonely man with no family. They praised Harold for giving his time and his own expenses to provide such a moving ceremony for a stranger. Now he saw the possibilities. Now he hunted deliberately. He favored the forgotten. Hitchhikers. Lonely people with no roots. But sometimes he'd pick someone from town. A pretty librarian, a grumpy bartender. People whose funerals he could personally handle. It was a perfect cycle. One evening, after leaving the cemetery, Harold noticed a car broke down just outside the city limits. He pulled his hearse to the side of the road like a shark gliding through still waters. "Need a lift?" he smiled as thunder rolled above. A young 20-something girl named Teresa, standing in front of her car with the hood up, hesitated. "May I use your phone?" she asked as the rain began to fall. "Sure thing. Why don't you hop in out of the rain while you wait?" Now the rain was coming down in sheets, so she climbed in. At first, he was charming, odd but polite. Then the doors locked. You said I could use your phone?" Harold remained silent. As the hearse drove off, Teresa began to pull at the door handle trying to get out. "It won't open," Harold told her. Teresa screamed. Harold reached over, grabbed her by the hair, and slammed her head into the dashboard, knocking her unconscious. When Teresa opened her eyes looking around to see what was happening, she was already inside the embalming room, strapped to the cold metal table, the overhead light humming above her. "Please," she sobbed. "You don't have to do this." Harold leaned over her, eyes alight with glee. He brushed a stray hair from her face with his cold fingers. "Oh, Teresa," he whispered. "You don't get it, do you?" He grinned wide, teeth yellow. "I put the fun in funeral." She screamed. The embalming pump kicked on. The room echoed with mechanical whirs and desperate cries. The next week, an obituary of a Jane Doe ran in the local paper. A closed casket service was held at Blue Sky's funeral home. Harold gave a moving eulogy. He dabbed at his eyes with a white handkerchief and shook every hand that passed by. The attendants came, out of respect for a young woman's death, even if they didn't know who she was. All assuming her death was an accident or perhaps she had an illness and didn't have any family to help. No one would know that her eyes had been sewn open beneath the lid. And no one would ever know just how many of the dead in Shelbyville had Harold to thank for their early departure. Because to Harold, death wasn't a job. It was a hobby.